The alarm bells from the White Tower echoed across the cliffs, but to Lyra, the sound was as faint as waves breaking on a far shore of another reality. She glided through the darkness of the inverted buildings, her breath turning into thin wisps of mist. Every step she took on the stone floor was now painful. The cracks along her legs had spread, making her feel like a crystal statue slowly fracturing under its own weight. Yet, strangely, the gravity around her did not press down. It wrapped around her instead, supporting her like invisible hands. That was Atlas. Even trapped within the crystalline sphere, he was still finding a way to protect her. "I'm fine," Lyra whispered into the void, hoping the vibration of her voice could travel along the currents of gravity to reach him. "Focus on keeping the city standing. Don't worry about me." A gentle breeze passed by, carrying a familiar warmth, like a soft caress through her hair. Atlas was listening, but he could not answer with words. His silence was heavier than any set of chains. Lyra stopped in front of a small, abandoned house perched at the very edge of the western cliffs, where the copper chains had completely rusted away. This was the district of the Forgotten, those no longer deemed valuable enough for the Empire to maintain their gravity. Here, the pull was weak, leaving everything almost weightless. "You should not be here, child of the sky." A hoarse voice rose from the shadows. An elderly man stepped forward, his eyes clouded yet sharp with awareness. He carried an old leather bag filled with fragments of anchor stone. "Who are you?" Lyra stepped back, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon. "Just a scavenger of history," the old man chuckled, pointing at the mark on Lyra's wrist. "That sigil, I haven't seen it in hundreds of years. It is the bond between a living anchor and a dragon heart. You and that man have created something the Empire deeply fears. A gravity born of love, not of enslavement." Lyra lowered her hand. "Do you know how to save him?" "Save?" The old man shook his head sadly. "He has merged with Alam Void. If he leaves, the city will vanish. But there is a way for him not to become a machine. You must find the feather of the Vanguard Dragon, the only thing that allows human will to exist alongside the weight of the world." A spark of hope flared within Lyra, but instantly, a chill ran down her spine. The mark on her wrist suddenly burned crimson. Far away atop the White Tower, streams of black light began to radiate outward. Malachor had awakened. He was no longer trying to lock Atlas in place. He was deliberately disrupting gravity to force Lyra into the open. Beneath her feet, the ground began to tremble. Small fragments of stone lifted violently into the air in chaotic spirals. Atlas was fighting fiercely to retain control against Malachor's interference. "He's in pain." Lyra gritted her teeth, the agony from the cracks in her body resonating with Atlas's suffering. "You must go now," the old man urged, handing her a worn fragment of a map. "To the Weeping Chasm in the north. That's where the Archivist Dragon is hiding. Only it knows where the feather is kept." Lyra looked toward the crystalline sphere glowing against the night sky. She knew that if she left, Atlas would have to endure the Empire's torment alone. But if she stayed, both of them would fade into nothingness. "Wait for me, Atlas," she vowed silently. She leapt into the air. Instead of falling, she stepped onto drifting shards as if walking across an invisible bridge of glass. Each step was a vow, each crack in her flesh a price she was willing to pay to bring the man she loved back. The Weeping Chasm was a colossal geological scar at the far northern edge of Alam Void. Here, weightless vortex wind screamed through narrow rock fissures, creating mournful sounds like the laments of forgotten souls. Lyra landed on a precarious rocky outcrop. The farther she moved from the city's center, the thinner Atlas's protection became. The mark on her wrist was no longer warm. It now radiated a bone-deep cold. "Atlas," she whispered, but only the shrieking wind answered. The sense of connection suddenly warped. Instead of gentle support, an overwhelming weight slammed down on her shoulders, forcing her to collapse onto the jagged stone. The gravity around her turned chaotic light as a feather one moment, heavy as lead the next. She understood then that at the White Tower, Malachor was using arcane torment to torture Atlas's will, preventing him from maintaining control. Don't let him break." Lyra clenched her teeth, struggling to crawl toward the archivist dragon's cavern. Every movement made the cracks across her body creak and splinter. A patch of skin on her shoulder had completely crystallized into pale blue crystal, transparent and cold. The price of walking the air for too long was beginning to erode her very form. Suddenly, a massive shadow fell over Lyra. The archivist dragon emerged from the saline mist, its eyes no longer gentle as before, but filled with wariness. "You bring chaos into my sanctuary," the dragon's voice rumbled. "The bond between you and the anchor is being clouded by fear. If you continue, you will only hasten his disintegration. I need the feather of the vanguard dragon." Lyra looked up, amber eyes brimming with tears. "It's the only way to save him from Malakor's corruption." The dragon studied her in silence, then glanced down at the mark on her hand as it darkened toward black. "The feather is not an artifact. It is a fragment of our species' soul. To obtain it, you must enter the mirror realm, the place where you will face the truth you have long been running from." The dragon opened its mouth and exhaled a stream of pale silver breath, forming a luminous gateway in the very heart of the chasm. Lyra stepped through without hesitation, but the moment she crossed the threshold, her heart tightened. She did not see a feather. She saw Atlas, yet not the warm Atlas she knew. Within the mirror realm, Atlas appeared as a colossal, chain-bound entity, his eyes blazing with fury. He looked at her, and his voice thundered, "Why did you leave me in this darkness? Why did you force me to bear the weight of the entire world, so that you could be free?" Lyra staggered back, stunned. "No, Atlas. You chose this yourself. Choice is just a lie you tell yourself to soothe your conscience, Lyra," the phantom Atlas roared. And suddenly, the luminous chain reformed, this time coiling tightly around her neck, dragging her toward the abyss. It was not the real Atlas, she knew that. It was the reflection of her deepest fear, that she was a selfish soul who had pushed the one she loved toward death. Yet the pain from the chain was real enough to choke the breath from her lungs. Amid the delirium, Lyra realized one thing: if she could not overcome this guilt, she would truly be crushed by the shackles of her own making before she ever had the chance to save him. Within the space of the mirror realm, every breath Lyra took sent ripples across the crystalline floor. The figure of Atlas before her kept shifting from the gentle guardian she loved into a furious beast of stone. "Look at the cracks on your body, Lyra," the phantom Atlas advanced, each of his steps making the ground quake. "You are falling apart. You are slowly dying for that naive ideal of liberation. And I am here, chained to the very heart of this world, forced to watch you disappear." Lyra collapsed to her knees as the chain of darkness tightened around her neck. She felt a bitter truth pierce her heart. A part of Atlas, the fragile, human part of him, was truly resentful. He was in agony, and that pain, carried through their bonded chain, had become these searing accusations. "I'm sorry," Lyra whispered as crystalline tears fell, shattering into shards of light. "I was too selfish to believe we could escape the laws of this world." But just as she was about to surrender, the mark on her wrist suddenly began to glow with a gentle blue light. Not the cold of betrayal, but the warmth of the memory of the first night they were bound together upon the dragon's back. Lyra lifted her gaze and stared directly at the phantom Atlas. "You are not him. The Atlas I know would never use chains to speak of love." She stood up, even as the dark chain stretched painfully against her skin. She did not fight it with force, she embraced it. "If this is the burden you must bear, then I will carry it with you, not out of duty, but because I choose you." Crack. The mirror shattered. The phantom Atlas dissolved into petals of light. Amid the ruins of the illusion, a long feather shimmering as if woven from clouds and molten gold floated down into her open palm. The feather of the vanguard dragon. The instant she touched it, Lyra felt the cracks throughout her body begin to ease. But a violent sense of unease surged through the mark. At the White Tower, Malakor had completed a new advance. He no longer tortured Atlas with physical pain. He was whispering lies into the crystalline sphere, that Lyra had fled with the archivist dragon, that she had found her freedom and forgotten the guardian who suffered in her place. "She's gone, Atlas." Malakor's voice echoed through the conduits of gravity. "Look, her pull has vanished. She doesn't need you anymore." From deep within the crystal sphere, a stream of dark energy began to seep out. Atlas, lost in delirium and despair, began to believe the lie. The city's gravity surged violently, causing towers and spires to start collapsing inward toward the center. "No, Atlas, don't believe him," Lyra screamed, though she knew he could not hear her from this distance. The archivist dragon appeared behind her, its eyes filled with concern. "The bond has been poisoned by doubt. If he gives into rage, he will drag all of Olim Void into the abyss with him." Lyra clenched the feather tightly. She no longer had time to return by ordinary means. She looked down into the bottomless void beneath the weeping chasm. "I'll take the shortcut through the core current," she said, her voice steady. "You'll be crushed." The dragon warned. "I have him holding me," Lyra replied with a bitter smile, then leapt into the depths into the raging cascade where gravity itself roared like a furious waterfall. Plunging into the core current was nothing like falling into an ordinary abyss. It was a waterfall of primordial energy, where gravity was twisted so violently that space and time themselves blurred and smeared together. Lyra felt her body being stretched into thousands of fine threads, only to be compressed again into a single point. Around her, images of Olim Void flashed past like fragments of a shattered film reel, houses being torn from their foundations, the cries of the people, and darkness slowly swallowing the white tower. "Atlas, listen to me," Lyra screamed, but her voice was devoured by the roar of the current. She clutched the feather of the vanguard dragon tightly against her chest. A molten gold light spilled from the feather, forming a fragile, protective cocoon that kept the unbearable pressure from crushing her already fractured bones. But the warmth of the mark on her wrist was fading, replaced by a dry, hollow cold, the chill of abandonment. Atlas was letting go. In his despair at the betrayal, he believed Malakor's illusion Atlas had stopped resisting. He no longer wanted to hold this city together. When an anchor loses its will, it becomes a black hole, drawing everything into annihilation. Lyra closed her eyes and focused all her consciousness on the fading bond of their chain. She did not use words. She used emotion. She sent him images of everything they had shared, the warmth on the dragon's back, the sound of his breathing as they hid beneath the clouds, and the pain when she touched the crystalline pedestal. "Atlas, if you want to let go, then let go of this entire world. But don't let go of me." Suddenly, the gravity current stuttered. A terrifying silence fell. Within the chaos, a massive hand of dim light reached out, grabbing Lyra just before she was pulled into the annihilating core. It was Atlas's will. Even shrouded in darkness, his instinct to protect her was stronger than all of Malakor's lies. But immediately, a surge of pitch-black energy crashed in, trying to sever the luminous hand. Malakor had sensed her interference. "You cannot reach him," the old man's voice boomed through the current. "He belongs to this empire. He is our eternal anchor." The pressure spiked violently. The feather's protective cocoon began to crack. Lyra felt herself being hurled out of the current, flung straight toward the inner stone wall of the White Tower. In the instant before impact, she saw Atlas through the crystal shell of the sphere. He was kneeling, his head bowed, Malakor's black chains coiled around his neck and limbs like venomous snakes. "Atlas!" Lyra slammed into the sanctum floor with a devastating shock. The feather flew from her hand, skidding toward the crystalline sphere. She lay there, her breath coming in broken gasps, as she saw Malakor approaching with a triumphant expression. "Look at this, you mongrel girl," Malakor sneered, crushing her trembling hand beneath his boot. "You've brought me exactly what I needed. This feather will complete the machine, and your man will never be human again." He picked up the feather, preparing to drive it into the sphere's core. Lyra looked at Atlas. The amber light in his eyes was fading, replaced by the dull gray of dead stone. If the feather were used this way, Atlas would truly become a soulless slave for eternity. Her final act was not an attack, but a sacrifice, one that even Malakor did not anticipate. Malakor held the vanguard feather in his hand, his smile twisted beneath the brilliant glow of the sphere. He brought it closer to the energy fissure, where Atlas's will was being slowly crushed. "Stop," Lyra rasped. She knew that if the feather were embedded by Malakor's hand, it would become an eternal shackle. With the last of her remaining strength, Lyra did not try to seize the feather back. Instead, she raked her fingernails deep into her own palm. where the fractures had hardened into razor-sharp crystal. A stream of blood sky blue and shimmering like dragon dust spilled forth. She did not throw herself at Malachor. She hurled herself into the leaking gravity current beneath the sphere. Atlas, catch me. The instant Lyra's blood touched the flowing energy, a chain reaction ignited. The blood, carrying the essence of dragonkind, was not crushed by gravity. It surged upward instead, enveloping the feather in Malachor's hand. Slash! The feather was no longer a lifeless artifact. Guided by Lyra's blood as a living conduit, it recognized its true bearer. It erupted into a blaze of silver flame, scorching Malachor's hand. The old man screamed in agony and stumbled back as the feather tore free, piercing through the crystalline shell and driving straight into the chest of the kneeling figure of Atlas within. "No, you've ruined everything," Malachor roared, but his voice was drowned out by a thunderous resonance rising from deep within the earth. The connection between dragon blood and anchor will, channeled through the feather, gave birth to something never before seen in the history of Olam Void. Perfect resonance. Crack spider webbed across the crystal sphere. Malachor's black chains detonated into fragments. Inside, Atlas's eyes flared back to life, not merely amber, but a fusion of molten gold and deep blue. But the price was immediate. Lyra felt her soul being drained away. To awaken the feather, she had used her own life as the bridge. Her body began to disintegrate faster than ever. Her legs dissolved into motes of light, drifting in the air. Ra. Atlas's voice was no longer the echo of grinding stone. It was clear raw with pain and love. The sphere shattered. Atlas stepped free, no longer a ghost, yet not wholly human. He was an embodiment of pure gravity, draped in a mantle of silver light born of the feather. He rushed forward, catching Lyra's vanishing body just before she could disappear completely. "Don't let go," Atlas whispered, holding her tightly. Power from the feather began to flow from Atlas into Lyra. It did not stop her dissolution, but it transformed it. Lyra did not fade into nothingness. She was merging with Atlas's very presence. Around them, the sanctum collapsed. Malachor, stricken with terror, realized he no longer controlled anything. The gravity of Olam Void no longer depended on chains or anchor stones. It now revolved around two souls clinging to each other at the heart of the explosion. "Let's go," Atlas said, his voice echoing across the city. He carried Lyra out of the White Tower and stepped directly into the open sky. Beneath his feet, the ground was no longer required. They became the center of a new world, one where gravity was ruled by the heart, not by oppression. Olam Void sank into an uncanny stillness after the aftershocks faded. Trembling citizens emerged from their shelters and looked up to witness a sight never before seen in history. The White Tower had lost its proud spire, yet the city did not fall. Instead, the entire metropolis hovered within a gentle halo of silver light. Suspended in the sky, Atlas and Lyra were no longer two separate beings. A new chain of light stronger and more radiant than ever linked their hearts. Atlas no longer bore the heavy form of a guardian. His body was half corporeal, half nebula. In his arms, Lyra had stopped disintegrating, but her skin now shimmered like stardust, her breath woven into the very pulse of gravity. They had become a twin anchor, a single entity holding the balance of an entire continent. "Atlas." Lyra slowly opened her eyes, her voice now carrying the echo of vast winds. "Has everything stopped?" "The city has stabilized," Atlas replied, his gaze falling upon the ruins of the sanctum below. "But we have permanently changed the laws of this place. Malachor and the Empire have lost control. Gravity is no longer a shackle, it is a bond." Yet this peace was only surface deep. In the lowest strata of Olam Void, where nobles still hoarded reserve anchor stones, a wave of fury was rising. They would not accept a world where gravity could no longer be weaponized to rule the weak. "Look," Lyra said, pointing toward the massive copper chains. The chains that once hung slack now began to recoil on their own, not by machinery. They were being drawn toward the floating fortresses of the powerful families. The elites were attempting to create private gravity zones, separating themselves from Atlas and Lyra's protection to forge a new empire in the sky. "They want to divide this world once again," Atlas growled. Power rippled through him, making nearby structures shudder. "We cannot force them into submission," Lyra said, taking his luminous hand. "If we use this power to impose our will, we become no different from Malachor. The price of freedom is allowing choice. Even when that choice leads to ruin, the cost of their resonance now revealed itself. They could no longer touch the ground. Whenever they drew too near to physical structures, the immense gravitational force of their union would crush everything around them. They were condemned to live forever in the sky guardian deities who could never return to an ordinary human life. Below them, their anchor dragons began to awaken. Sensing the freedom radiating from the twin anchor, they shattered their own chains. A great migration of dragons was about to begin, and with it came the truth that Alam Void would no longer have fixed anchors beyond Atlas and Lyra. "The journey of liberation has only just begun," Lyra whispered, "and it will be more painful than the battle we have already survived." On the far horizon, a dark radiance began to rise. The old rulers had activated an ancient weapon, the anti-gravity entity, designed to knock Atlas and Lyra out of the city's orbit. The presence of Atlas and Lyra in the skies above Alam Void had become like a new sun, brilliant, yet deeply threatening. As they drifted over the upper districts, crystal chandeliers inside noble mansions shattered, and hanging gardens were pulled upward toward them. The power of the twin anchor was too pure, too overwhelming for the city's aging structures to endure. "We're hurting them," Lyra cried out as she watched a stone balcony crumble under the pressure of their passage. "Atlas, our gravity. It's no longer protection." Atlas tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. His face bore the solemn weight of a god forced to shoulder mortal suffering. "The resonance between your blood and my will has created absolute gravity. The city was built on fragile anchors, it cannot withstand perfection." Meanwhile, at Skykeep Fortress, the final stronghold of the nobility, a colossal arc-shaped machine began to activate. It was the anti-gravity engine, a relic from the age of inversion. Instead of holding things in place, it unleashed shockwaves designed to repel all natural attraction. Boom! A surge of dark violet energy blasted out from Skykeep, slamming into Atlas and Lyra's silver halo. Both were hurled backward. The bond between them shuddered violently, sending searing pain through their shared existence. "They're trying to tear us apart," Atlas roared. He reached out, attempting to bend gravity to crush the machine, but the instant he exerted force, the entire western quarter below began to fracture. "Don't, Atlas." Lyra stopped him. "If you strike them, you'll crush thousands of innocent people living beneath that fortress." The dilemma gnawed at them. If they stayed, their presence would continue to damage the city. If they left, the Empire would wield the machine to rule through terror, the fear of being thrown upward. Suddenly, from the clouds below, hundreds of dark shapes surged into the sky. They were the liberated dragons. They did not flee instead. They surrounded Atlas and Lyra, forming a living ring of protection. The dragons used their own bodies to absorb the shockwaves from Skykeep, sharing the burden with the twin anchor. "They're helping us," Lyra realized, crystalline tears streaming down her face again. "They want us to leave, to find a place that truly belongs to us." But leaving Alam Void meant abandoning a world in chaos. Atlas looked at Lyra, then at the dragons writhing in pain beneath the repeated shockwaves. A reckless plan took shape in his mind. "We will not simply leave," Atlas said, his voice resonant with authority. "We will take the heart of this place with us. If they want a world without us, then they must learn to stand on their own feet." He began channeling all his power into the vanguard feather embedded in his chest. He was no longer trying to hold the buildings aloft. Instead, he was reclaiming every fragment of gravitational magic the Empire had stolen from dragonkind over countless centuries. It was a brutal act of reclamation. Anchor stones within noble estates began to dim, turning into ordinary rubble. The elite screamed in panic as their floating fortresses lurched and wobbled, stripped of their artificial power sources. "This is unforgivable," Atlas whispered to Lyra, "but it is the only way to make them stop chaining us." The entire sky of Alam Void trembled in an unprecedented seismic upheaval. All artificial anchor stones, once symbols of imperial power and exploitation, went dark at once. The opulent floating fortresses of the nobility began to tilt and list, plumes of dust and smoke rising as their artificial lift failed. Atlas and Lyra hovered at the epicenter of the chaos. The vanguard feather embedded in Atlas's chest now blazed like a falling star, drawing every current of pure gravitational energy toward itself. "Look, Lyra," Atlas said, his voice heavy with sorrow yet resolute. "They are afraid because, for the first time, they must face true freedom." Below them, the people of Alam Void were no longer crushed beneath the arcane pressures once imposed by the Wardens. Some panicked, but others began to realize they could walk more lightly, more freely. The city did not plunge into the abyss. It was finding a new equilibrium of its own, rooted in the natural structure of the cliffs. Hundreds of dragons encircling them began to call out. The sound was deep and resounding, a summons that marked the moment of departure. "We have to go," Lyra whispered. She felt warmth from the mark on her wrist urging her to leave behind the ruins of the past. "Our presence here would only make them dependent on a new kind of chain." Atlas nodded. He swept his hand through the air, carving a radiant rift of silver light. It was a passage to the far expanse, a realm where gravity and space melded into one, where dragons and free spirits could coexist without anchors. As the twin anchor began to move, a vast retinue of dragons of every size followed in their wake. The sight was like a river of light flowing backward into the galaxy. Yet from the wreckage of Sky Keep, one final black beam shot upward. It was Malachor, clinging with his last strength to the flank of the smallest dragon in the procession. He did not seek justice, he sought vengeance. He wanted to drag the twin anchor down into the abyss alongside his shattered ambitions. "You will never know peace." Malachor's mad scream echoed as he hurled a black chain that whipped through the air and wrapped tightly around Lyra's leg. The weight of Malachor's hatred suddenly yanked Lyra back, halting her at the very edge of the spatial gate. Atlas stopped short, fury igniting in his eyes. He could not let go of Lyra, but if he hesitated too long, the gate would collapse, trapping everyone in the void. "Don't let go of me," Lyra cried, her hands straining to hold onto Atlas's silver light as Malachor dragged her toward the darkness below. The final battle was no longer between armies, but between the pull of love and the crushing weight of hatred. The spatial gate leading to the far expanse was slowly closing, silver lightning tearing across the sky. Lyra hung suspended at the boundary between liberation and the abyss. Malachor's black chain was not only coiled around her leg, it was draining energy from the mark on her wrist, corrupting its blue light into a poisonous violet. "If I cannot possess gravity, then no one shall," Malachor howled. His face had completely twisted, his eyes reduced to two deep, lightless voids. He was sacrificing his own life, turning himself into a deadweight of monstrous mass to drag the entire system down with him. Atlas clenched Lyra's hands so tightly that stardust scattered from their intertwined forms. He felt the crushing pull of Malachor stretching his luminous existence to its limits. Behind them, hundreds of dragons were trapped, their anxious roars echoing as the gate grew increasingly unstable. "Atlas, you have to take them and go." Lyra gritted her teeth. Pain from the black chain made the cracks along her neck begin to bleed silver light. "If you don't leave now, everything will be swallowed when this gate collapses." "I will not leave you behind," Atlas roared. He tried to shatter Malachor's chain with sheer will, but the old sorcerer's magic was forged from hatred, the one force capable of opposing love's gravity. The harder Atlas pulled Lyra toward him, the tighter Malachor's chain constricted, as if it were devouring her soul. Lyra looked into Atlas's eyes that held an entire star-filled sky, and the grief of a guardian who had lost everything to protect her. She understood that if this continued, they would both fall, and dragonkind would lose its final hope. "Atlas, listen to me," Lyra whispered, a faint smile touching her lips. "Gravity isn't possession. Gravity is trust that we will find each other, no matter where we are." In an act no one anticipated, Lyra did not struggle to escape Malachor's chain. She summoned the full power of dragon blood within her, not to repel him, but to vaporize the part of her body he was holding. Flash! An explosion of blue light erupted at Lyra's leg. The black chain lost its anchor, hurling Malachor into the vast emptiness of Alam Void. The old man screamed as his body began to disintegrate under the immense pressure of the space beyond the city. But Lyra lost her balance as well, starting to fall backward into the dense cloud layers below. Lyra, Atlas did not hesitate. Instead of stepping into the gate to secure eternal survival and guide the dragons, he turned his back on everlasting salvation. He compressed his radiant form, becoming a silver arrow that shot downward, chasing the fading figure of the woman he loved. He caught her amid the ashen clouds, pulling her fractured body tightly into his arms. High above them, the spatial gate slammed shut. The dragons were safe in their new world, but the twin anchor was now in free fall within an Alam void, stripped of anchors, stripped of laws. Malakor's screams faded away, swallowed by the terrifying pressure of the atmosphere. Atlas and Lyra fell through layers of ashen clouds, a realm untouched by the light of the White Tower. There was no spatial gate, no protection from the dragons, only two fragile souls suspended within an immeasurable void. Lyra's body began to grow cold. Destroying a part of her own being to escape Malakor had caused the flow of her life to leak away. The silver light around her flickered like a candle about to go out in a storm. Atlas, you should have gone with them, Lyra whispered, her breath thin as smoke. That world would mean nothing without you, Atlas replied, tightening his embrace. He felt the raging wind tearing at his mantle of light. Below them lay the endless sea of clouds, a dense realm where gravity was completely inverted. Instead of being crushed, they felt their descent slow. The air grew thick, almost liquid, carrying the scent of ancient stone and the damp breath of forgotten eras. Atlas focused every remaining shard of his will into the vanguard feather embedded in his chest. He no longer used it to rise upward. He used it to create a zone of absolute gravity around them. A sphere of light enveloped the two of them, sealing out the lethal cold of the sea of clouds. They landed on something soft yet solid. Not earth, not stone. It was a floating island, formed from gigantic petrified roots, drifting through the cloud sea for thousands of years. Atlas laid Lyra down upon glowing green moss. He knelt beside her, his luminous hand trembling as it brushed the fractures across her face. Where are we? Lyra asked softly, her amber eyes lifting toward a sky where faint bands of galaxies shimmered beyond the clouds. At the beginning of everything, Atlas answered gently, where the first anchor was driven before humanity built Alam Void. Silence settled in. No alarm bells, no rusted copper chains, only the sound of their heartbeats, merging into one rhythm. Lyra felt a strange peace. Though her body remained fractured, the mark on her wrist no longer hurt. It glowed with a pale golden hue, gentle as morning sunlight. Their bond had transcended both life and death. They had lost the world above, but they had found each other within the void. Atlas, Lyra reached out and touched his chest, where the feather still shone. If we can never return, do you regret it? Atlas leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. I spent my entire life keeping the city from falling, but only by falling with you did I learn what it truly means to stand. Within the endless sea of clouds, a new truth took shape. They no longer needed to be anchors for anyone else. They were anchors to one another. Yet far away, in the darkness among the fossilized roots, another pair of eyes slowly opened. Neither dragon nor human, an ancient entity of the sea of clouds, had awakened, stirred by the presence of the vanguard feather. The calm upon the fossilized root island was only a fleeting illusion. Atlas realized this when the ground beneath them began to pulse rhythmically, not from the wind, but from the breathing of a colossal being. This was no island. This was the great root dragon, an ancient dragon entity that had transformed into living vegetation, slumbering since the age of inversion. The presence of the vanguard feather embedded in Atlas's chest, combined with the pure dragon blood flowing through Lyra, had reawakened its dormant heartbeat. Something is rising, Lyra whispered. She tried to push herself upright, but her crystalline legs had not yet fully healed. From cracks in the petrified roots, an amber-colored sap began to flow, wrapping gently around the fractures in Lyra's body. The pain eased, but Atlas felt a terrifying pull, something attempting to siphon energy from the feather within him. It's starving, Atlas growled as he stepped protectively in front of Lyra, his luminous hand flaring with light. "It has slept for too long, and now it wants to use us to be reborn." Far away, in the sky of Alam Void, they had just left behind, dark violet flares ignited once more. Malachor was gone, but the consequences of withdrawing all gravitational control had torn the fabric of space itself. A void breach was forming, threatening to devour both the old city and the sea of clouds below. "Atlas, look." Lyra pointed toward the widening rupture. "If the city collapses completely into the void, it will drag the sea of clouds with it. The creature beneath us is waking not to help but to flee." The truth struck hard and merciless. They had saved dragonkind, but dismantling the system had left a fatal wound in the world itself. Atlas understood that he could not simply live in peace with Lyra in the void, while millions above were on the brink of erasure, erased by the very freedom he had unleashed. "We have to go back," Atlas said, his voice heavy with resolve. "Go back?" Lyra stared at him in shock. "There is no way back. The gate is gone, and our bodies. We would be crushed if we entered that void zone." "Not to return as wardens," Atlas replied, looking at the trembling feather, "but to become the foundation. We'll use the power of the twin anchor to seal the breach." It was a decision without retreat. If they did this, they would no longer exist as drifting beings. They would become a permanent membrane, dissolved into the structure of the universe itself to halt the destruction. They would not die, but they would no longer have forms capable of embracing one another. The being beneath them began to thrash, hurling chunks of fossilized stone into the sky. Atlas took Lyra's hand, feeling the tremor in her fingers. "This time, the cost isn't disappearance," he whispered. "It's existing forever in silence. Are you ready?" Lyra looked at the black void swallowing distant stars, then back into Atlas's eyes, filled with love. She tightened her grip on his hand as the stardust on her skin burned brighter than ever. "As long as you're with me in that current," she said softly, "I'm not afraid of anything." The journey against the current proved more arduous than any battle they had ever faced. Beneath them, the great root dragon let out an earth-shattering roar and surged away, but Atlas and Lyra did not follow it. Instead, they used the force of its movement as propulsion, hurling themselves toward the widening void breach in the sky of Alam Void. The closer they drew to the rift, the thinner reality became. Lyra felt her hands beginning to fade. No longer crystalline fractures, but true dissolution into light. Each time she tried to grasp Atlas's hand, their fingers passed through one another like drifting mist. "Atlas, I can't feel your hands anymore," Lyra cried amid the shrieking howl of the void. "Don't use your hands, Lyra," Atlas replied, his voice coming from every direction, as though he were slowly becoming the very space around her. "Use the pulse of the mark." The vanguard feather in Atlas's chest began to emit sharp cracking sounds. It was being stretched between two opposing forces, their desire to live on one side, and the void's demand for balance on the other. The breach ahead was not an entity, it was a cosmic hunger, where all matter and gravity were devoured and reduced to zero. Atlas knew that to seal this rupture, they would have to perform an act of inverse manifestation. Instead of clinging to their forms, they would willingly allow the void to consume them, carrying with them the will of the twin anchor to pin the space shut from within. "Look at me, Atlas." Lyra gazed at her own form. She was now nothing more than a shimmering blue aura. "We're becoming light. We're becoming the very fate we've been running from." Atlas smiled, even as his face dissolved into silver outlines. "But this time, no one is forcing us. This is the choice of freedom." They flew into the heart of the breach. Here, time stood still. Alam Void above looked like a fragile glass toy on the verge of shattering, while the sea of clouds below resembled a torn and unraveling tapestry. At the instant they reached the core of destruction, the immense pressure drove their souls into total resonance. Lyra experienced all of Atlas's memories, the loneliness of the warden atop the tower, his doubts about the kingdom, and the overwhelming hope he felt the first time he saw her drifting through the clouds. Atlas, in turn, felt everything Lyra carried, the pain of her hybrid bloodline and her longing to fly without chains. They were no longer Atlas and Lyra. They were an idea. Flash. The explosion produced no sound, only a wave of gold-and-silver gravity that swept across the entire world. The void breach began to contract, stitched closed by their very essence. The tears in the sky above void sealed themselves, leaving behind a radiant galaxy unlike anything ever seen before. In the physical world, their forms vanished, but within the flow of gravity embracing the city, a new presence remained warm, steadfast, and filled with love. The rift had healed, but the cost was absolute. Their tangible existence had fully dissolved into the fabric of the universe. Void awakened to a morning without the screech of copper chains. The sky no longer bore blackened tears. In their place stretched a ribbon of gold and silver light across the firmament, radiating a gentle warmth like silken sunlight. The city's people emerged from the rubble, glancing at one another in quiet disbelief. Gravity now felt strange. It no longer pressed down to weary the bones, nor was it so loose that everything drifted away. It was steady, supple like invisible hands softly lifting each rooftop, each footstep. Did they leave? A child asked, eyes fixed on the white tower, its spire now gone. No one answered, yet an odd hollowness settled in every heart. The former wardens, having laid down their weapons, gathered in Central Link Square. They no longer received orders from Malachor or any king. Instead, they felt a faint vibration beneath their feet, a familiar pulse. Atlas, whispered the young soldier who had once followed Lyra. He placed his hand on the ground and felt that rhythm. He didn't go anywhere. He's right here. Meanwhile, in the lowest cloud layers, scholars of the ancient tongues began to notice something unusual. Along the pale limestone cliffs, archaic symbols surfaced on their own. They told no tales of conquest, only of a promise. When cloud merges with earth, and blood meets the heart of the world, chains shall become melodies. The empire had collapsed entirely. There was no coup, no grand overthrow. Its power, the monopoly on gravity, had simply ceased to function. When everyone could move freely without the dispensation of anchor stones, those seated upon thrones suddenly became meaningless. Yet this salvation carried a quiet sorrow. Lyra and Atlas had become part of the laws of nature, but they no longer had bodies to be recorded in history as heroes of flesh and bone. A group of freedom seekers, led by the archivist dragon, returned to the land, began a search. They did not seek bodies, but the remaining memory fragments of the twin anchor. In a small corner of the Sea of Clouds, where the root island had once drifted by, only one thing was found. A small scrap of fabric from Lyra's cloak, pinned fast to a fossilized branch. When touched, it brought no chill, only a strangely profound peace. They became all things so that we might live. The archivist dragon spoke in the language of the mind. Our task now is not to find them, but to protect the world they have become. Yet deep within the stream of light stitching the sky back together, two tiny motes of radiance continued to entwine. They no longer had words, but they shared perfect understanding. Atlas and Lyra, though they had lost their forms, had found an eternal mode of being, free from the pain of dissolution, bound only by infinite connection. But the calm of the new world was soon to be tested by another remnant of the past. Something in the twin anchor had not fully erased. The newfound freedom of Void was a beautiful dream, but one soon unsettled by the ghost of the past. In the sealed subterranean chambers beneath the White Tower, those still loyal to Malachor's cult, the gravity engineers, refused to accept defeat. To them, a world without hierarchy, without stratified control of gravity, was chaos that had to be punished. They activated the dust engine, an ancient device designed to drain all vitality from natural gravity and convert it into annihilating heat. One afternoon, the golden silver ribbon of light in the sky suddenly dulled to ash gray. Gravity, it's becoming hot, a citizen cried out as droplets of water no longer fell, but evaporated instantly in midair. Heat surged up from the ground. The remaining copper chains began to glow red, melting limestone itself. The gravity engineers were deliberately overloading the flow. Atlas and Lyra had created, forcing the two fused souls to either manifest and resist, or be burned away along with the city. They're draining him, the young soldier shouted as the band of light in the sky began to contract, revealing patches of pitch black void. From within the luminous current, a violent tremor rippled through every mind in the city. It was the silent scream of Atlas and Lyra. They were enduring a new agony, being turned into fuel for the old empire's killing machine. But this time, the people of Alam Void did not stand still. We won't let them sacrifice themselves again. Without orders, thousands former wardens and petty thieves alike grabbed tools, picks, and hammers, charging toward the hidden tunnel entrances beneath the White Tower. They finally understood that the freedom gifted by the twin anchor was not a privilege to enjoy, but a responsibility to defend. The Archivist Dragon led the charge, breathing frost into the corridors to temper the unbearable heat. At the heart of the dust engine, the fanatics laughed madly as the light in the sky began to condense, revealing faint silhouettes of a man and a woman holding each other in pain. "Manifest yourselves. Let us chain you once more," one of the leaders screamed. But at that very instant, thousands of hands pressed against the tunnel walls. They possessed no magic, but they carried another force of gravity. Unity. A current born of collective faith surged back into the earth, flowing through fossilized roots and rising toward the radiant stream above. Atlas and Lyra, instead of being consumed, received an immense reinforcement from the very people they had saved. The light flared brighter than ever, not mere silver, but the pure white of shared will. Boom! The dust engine exploded into millions of fragments. The suffocating heat vanished, replaced by a cool, cleansing rain falling over Alam Void. Within that rain, people glimpsed two figures gliding atop the tower for a single fleeting instant before dissolving back into the sky. They were no longer in pain. They were smiling. The world had learned how to fight for itself. After the explosion of the dust engine, Alam Void was no longer an archipelago of scattered stone masses. A strange phenomenon took hold. All matter in the city began to vibrate at a low, gentle frequency, creating an invisible bond that connected person to person. There were no more heavy copper chains, no more burning anchor stones. Gravity had become a conversation between the ground and the soles of one's feet. Atlas and Lyra, sustained by the will of the people, reached a new state of existence, the eternal echo. They no longer needed to strain themselves to seal fractures. The world was healing itself through the awakening of those who lived upon it. At the highest point of the White Tower, now an open observatory exposed to sky and cloud, a message slowly emerged in shimmering light. Not written in words, but conveyed through images transmitted directly into the hearts of anyone who stood there. The people saw a guardian laying down his blade, and a thief letting a jewel slip from her fingers. They saw two hands clasped together not by chains, but by choice. Weight is not a punishment. The echo of Atlas spread outward. It is how the world holds us. And freedom is not flying away. Lyra's voice followed, clear as wind chimes. It is when you can fall without fear, knowing there is always an embrace waiting. The gold and silver band in the sky began to fade, not because it vanished, but because it seeped into every slab of stone, every branch, every living vein of Alam Void. The twin anchor had become the heartbeat of the world. The young soldier stood at the observatory and watched a small dragon glide past, bearing no scars or chains. He smiled, feeling his body light and his spirit profoundly grounded. Yet this serenity carried a quiet sadness. Atlas and Lyra had truly merged, completely. They no longer suffered, but they no longer shared private conversations or the warmth of human touch. They had become a collective guardian, protecting a world they could no longer walk upon themselves. But at sunset, at the place where Lyra had once been chained to Atlas's leg, a strange flower bloomed. Its petals were deep blue with a core of molten gold, releasing the scent of clouds and the warmth of sunlit earth. It was the final sign, a farewell, or perhaps a promise of rebirth in another form, an era where gravity would no longer require sacrifice. Many decades had passed since the sky of Alam Void was mended. The colossal copper chains now existed only as historical relics, completely overgrown with bioluminescent vines. The city was no longer called Alam Void, the Void Zone. Its people had renamed it Atlas Lyra, symbol of eternal connection. The age of inversion had receded into the past, giving way to the era of union. The world's gravity had become strangely stable. Children born in this age could leap tens of meters into the air and land as lightly as drifting down. Dragons and humans lived together in peace. The great creatures were no longer imprisoned anchors, but companions transporting goods and guiding travelers across the sea of clouds. Yet every balance requires a guardian. At the White Tower now, the Institute of Gravitational Studies, a young scientist named Lion observed the oscillations of what scholars called the world's pulse. Recently, he had noticed subtle signs of weakening in the gold-and-silver band across the sky. Not due to hatred, but due to forgetting. When people stop believing in the wonder of gravity, Lion wrote pensively in his journal, its pull begins to lose its will. The people had begun to take their freedom for granted. They no longer remembered the price the twin anchor had paid. And as gratitude faded, the bond between Atlas and Lyra and the world itself began to loosen. One day, a small stone from the western district suddenly fell upward into the sky. The event triggered a ripple of panic. Was punishment returning? Lion knew what had to be done. He did not search for the old anchor stones. Instead, he organized a festival, the Festival of the Pulse. He called upon the people to join hands, to face the radiant band in the sky, and to retell the story of the guardian and the thief. On the night of the festival, tens of thousands gathered along the cliffs. Songs echoed across the sea of clouds. They did not ask for protection. They simply reminded the world that they still remember. We remember the weight of your hands. We remember the lightness of her steps. At once, the gold and silver band flared brilliantly. A wave of warmth swept through the city. Among the clouds, two faint figures appeared clearer than they had been at any time since the explosion of the dust engine. They stood side by side, gazing down upon the world with pride. But Lion noticed something else. Atlas and Lyra were no longer merely dissolved spirits. Sustained by the people's faith, their presence was beginning to condense. A slow process of rebirth had begun. They're returning, Lion whispered through tears. Not as gods but as us. At the edge of a distant forest, where a deep blue flower with a core of molten gold was in full bloom, two unfamiliar children suddenly appeared. A boy with broad shoulders and the steadfast gaze of stone, and a girl with amber eyes who moved as if carried by the wind. They looked at each other and smiled, as though they had known one another for countless lifetimes, even though they could not remember what their names were. The boy with eyes as deep as an abyss, and the girl who carried the breath of open skies, grew up in a small village on the edge of Atlas Lyra. The people called them Leo and Mina. They did not know who they were, yet from the moment they learned to walk, their hands had instinctively sought one another. Gravity behaved strangely around the two children. When Leo grew angry, the pebbles beneath his feet became so heavy, they sank into the earth. When Mina felt joy, the flowers around her lifted gently into the air, as if eager to dance with her among the winds. One day, as they sat on a rocky ledge overlooking the sea of clouds, Leo asked, "Mina, do you hear the whispers? The voices of chains?" Mina replied softly, her amber eyes fixed on the emptiness ahead. "But not iron chains. Chains made of light. They're calling us toward the White Tower." Their memories did not return as images, but as sensations. Leo felt a sharp ache in his chest whenever he saw crystal structures. Mina felt an irresistible urge to steal something priceless, only to give it back to the sky. In the city, the scientist Lion had already noticed the appearance of the two children. He knew this rebirth was no coincidence. The gold and silver band in the sky was contracting, concentrating all its essence into these two small bodies. Atlas and Lyra were trading eternal guardianship for a brief human life, so they could once again touch one another in flesh and bone. But a world without an eternal anchor would become unbearably fragile. If they fully awaken and reclaim their power, the band in the sky will vanish, Lion observed anxiously as he studied his charts. The city will have to stand on its own on the gravity of each individual human. If the people's faith wavers even slightly, Atlas Lyra will collapse. Meanwhile, Leo and Mina had slipped into the Institute of Gravitational Studies. They stood before the open observatory. The moment they stepped into the circle of light, a powerful surge shot along both their spines. The mark on Mina's wrist flared brilliantly, The vanguard feather, now transformed into a symbol of light, vibrated within Leo's chest. Atlas, Mina breathed, her voice no longer that of a child. Lyra, Leo answered, his eyes igniting with amber shot through molten gold. At that instant, the luminous band over Alam Void flared one final time, then began to cascade downward like a brilliant meteor rain. All gravitational energy was returning to its rightful bearers. The city of Atlas Lyra suddenly lost the gentle lift of its divine guardian. Buildings swayed. People stared upward in panic as the protective radiance began to dissolve. This was the final trial. Would humanity possess the strength to hold their world on their own? Or would they once again require the chains of sacrifice? Leo and Mina stood still, feeling immense power flood their young bodies. They could choose to become gods once more and save the city, or choose to remain human and allow the world to live or fall by its own will. The sky above Atlas Lyra convulsed. The gold-and-silver band long the city's protective veil was folding in on itself like silk, being drawn toward Leo and Mina. The tallest towers began to tilt, and the dry crack of limestone splitting echoed through the air. The power flooding into the two children's bodies was unbearable. Leo felt as though millions of tons of stone were crushing his shoulders, while Mina felt her bones turning to air, threatening to dissolve into nothingness. Memories from 1,000 years ago surged back, violent, tear-soaked. Atlas, what do we do? Mina, Lyra gasped, her small hands clutching Leo's clothes. Leo Atlas looked down at the swaying city. He saw a lion and the people below gripping each other's hands in the square, not to pray, but simply to keep one another from falling. They don't need us to be anchors anymore, Lyra, Leo said, his voice carrying the calm weight of an old guardian. If we absorb all this energy and become gods, they'll remain slaves to protection forever. We have to return gravity to them, with extraordinary will, instead of drawing the light into themselves. Leo and Mina clasped hands and thrust them forward together. Rather than concentrating the energy at a single point, they used the vanguard feather to disperse it into billions of tiny motes of light. Feel the weight of yourselves, Leo shouted, his voice echoing across the cliffs. The luminous dust fell, seeping into every person, every dragon, every stone of the city. A miracle unfolded. Each being became a small anchor. Gravity no longer radiated from the city's center, it emerged from the bonds between people themselves. When they stood close, attraction grew stronger. When they trusted one another, the world stabilized. The city of Atlas Lyra shuddered, then slowly steadied. There was no longer a glowing band in the sky, but the ground beneath every foot felt firmer than ever before. This was shared gravity. The pain vanished. Leo and Mina collapsed onto the observatory floor, completely exhausted. The gold and silver light had faded, leaving behind two ordinary children with eyes that still carried traces of stars. They had chosen to be human, chosen a short life, in order to truly live within the world they had saved. We did it. Mina smiled, her amber eyes shining beneath the real light of afternoon, not magical radiance. Yes, Leo took her hand, feeling the warmth of living skin, no longer the touch of light-formed beings. For the first time, I feel like I can truly touch you. Below in the square, the people erupted in cheers. They realized they no longer needed a god. They had learned how to hold their own world. And yet, they also knew that somewhere above them, their two heroes had returned not to rule, but to walk beside them along the wind-swept roads. Yet what was the final cost of dispersing that power? Leo noticed the vanguard feather on his chest slowly turning to stone, and Mina felt the dragon blood within her sink deep into her veins, becoming a secret that could never again be awakened. Years passed over the city of Atlas Lyra. There were no more resplendent upheavals, no more battles that tore the sky apart. Leo and Mina grew up as ordinary people, within a world where gravity had become part of breathing itself. They lived in a small house set upon the highest cliff, where white clouds poured through the windows every early morning. Leo became a stone mason, using his steady hands to carve forms from limestone. Mina tended hanging gardens, where the deep blue flowers with molten gold cores now bloomed everywhere, releasing a pure fragrance that soothed anxious souls. They never spoke of what they had witnessed within the current of light. To the world, Atlas and Lyra were gods of legend. To themselves, they were simply two people in love, savoring every moment of touching one another without fear of dissolving. Leo, look. Mina pointed toward the horizon one late afternoon. The gold and silver band of long ago was gone, but whenever the sun set, the sky revealed soft halos of light, reflected from the sea of clouds below. These were traces of shared gravity, the quiet presence of a love that had transformed into all things. Yet ordinary life carried its own harsh laws. Leo noticed that his hands sometimes grew heavy as stone, and Mina often gazed at her fingers as they slowly turned translucent beneath moonlight. Dispersing divine energy among the people had not erased their true nature entirely. It had only slowed the process of dissolution. They knew their time was shorter than that of others. They were the final anchors, gradually wearing away to keep the world's heartbeat fully stable before passing it completely to future generations. Do you regret it? Mina asked, resting her head on Leo's shoulder as they sat on the porch. We could have been immortal gods, drifting among the stars forever. Leo tightened his hold on her hand, feeling the true warmth of Mina's skin. Immortality without feeling your heartbeat, without breathing in the scent of flowers, that's nothing but a radiant prison. I choose one day as a human with you over 1,000 lonely years up there. One night, beneath the fullest moon. The last vanguard feather upon Leo's chest finally turned to stone and crumbled into fine dust. Mina felt a gentle, serene lightness spread through her body. They understood then that their final duty was complete. The world had fully balanced itself. They lay side by side, gazing up at the sky of Atlas Lyra. No more chains, no more anchors, only absolute freedom. I'm so sleepy, Mina whispered, her amber eyes slowly closing. Sleep, my Lyra, Leo replied, his voice deep and warm like the earth itself. I'll find you wherever we fall. In that sleep, their souls gently separated from their human forms, not to become gods, but to dissolve into the winds, becoming stardust that would watch over the dreams of the city's children. Time never truly stops. It only transforms pain into new seeds of life. Hundreds of years have passed since Leo and Mina, the final incarnations of the twin anchor, left behind their forms of dust and sand. The city of Atlas Lyra has now become a distant legend, a sanctuary of freedom suspended between the layers of the sky. On the lands below, where humanity once feared being fallen upward, vast stretches of green forests now spread to the horizon. Dragons are no longer mystical creatures or tools of forced labor. They have become guardians of the planet's energy flow. The system of shared gravity has been a resounding success. No individual or organization can possess gravity to rule over others. Every living being, every stone, now carries within it a fragment of Atlas and Lyra's power. The world has learned to balance itself not through chains, but through resonance. At the ancient Institute of Gravitational Studies, now a historical museum, a strange slab of limestone is still carefully preserved. There are no words carved upon it, only two handprints intertwined, radiating an eternal warmth. A young schoolgirl stands before the stone and gently touches it. She does not feel fear at its weight, but instead a curious lightness in her heart. Teacher, why did they choose to fade away? The girl asks. The guide smiles, gazing toward the sky where amber-colored clouds drift lazily. They did not fade away, child. They simply chose to exist everywhere. When you walk without stumbling, that is Atlas. When you dream of the clouds, that is Lyra. They are the vibration that keeps this world from breaking apart. In another dimension, deep within the core of the universe, where all physical laws converge, there is a ribbon of silver light entwined with a stream of molten gold energy. They are no longer a guardian, nor a thief. They are perfect balance. They no longer need to sacrifice themselves, for their world has grown mature. A gentle, resonant sound echoes through the void, like wind chimes brushing against stone. It is Lyra's laughter, answered by Atlas's voice. Now, they have all of eternity to be together, not to bear burdens, but to witness life blossoming from the seeds they sowed with their own blood and tears. Gravity is not a burden. It is love's vow to the ground. The story has come to a complete and fulfilled close. Thank you for accompanying the journey of Atlas and Lyra from rusted copper chains to eternal freedom among the stars.